In Southeast Asia, the gong has been, and is even today, an object of great value, surrounded by obligations, prohibitions, and mystery. At the borders of Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam, some 30 peoples who speak Austronesian and Austroasiatic languages are sharing a single religion, that of the spirits, and they share the same musical heritage, playing gongs. Up to the end of the 60s, these people lived in the forest, practicing slash-and-burn agriculture and training elephants. Then their home territory was turned into killing fields. In the war, the forest was severely damaged by American defoliants before undergoing a thoughtless exploitation that almost eradicated the forest completely. These events created upheaval in the culture of these peoples, who have, since then, turned to planting rice and coffee, but in spite of all that, they continue striking their gongs, the basic symbol of their cultural identity. Gongs have been played since ancient times. A Chinese source indicates their existence in the 6th century. In Cambodia, these bas-reliefs at the temple of Angkor Wat conclusively date them from the 12th century. Apparently, at that time, gongs were carried in processions during rites of a military nature. Drums and various instruments would accompany them. In northern Vietnam, during religious festivals, such processions can still be seen, animated with gongs and drums of the temple. In the border zone of Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam, the original function of the gong was to awaken, to invite and satisfy the yang, ever-present and all-knowing spirits that determine the destiny of everyone. Every element existing on earth is associated with a yang in the beyond. Waters, mountains, trees, all inanimate things, including stairways in a house, and the mortar that crushes rice grains. Every village community, in fact, every individual also has his or her or its own protecting spirits. The Nye of Laos, like other peoples in the region, practice buffalo sacrifice. Through this gesture of offering, the people seek reconciliation with the yang, to appease their wrath and absolve transgressions of the law dictated by the spirits. The ritual is codified and solemn, and the entire village is invited to attend. This complex choreography is performed in front of the community house in the center of the village. A barrel-shaped drum almost always accompanies the gongs. Its presence here goes back to a legend according to which humanity was saved from a flood because a young woman and a dog were able to find refuge here. As the waters went down, the two married and gave birth to a boy who later committed incest with his mother, and this led to the populating of the region. Gongs always accompany major rituals and big festivities. Ceremonies for the yang, births, marriages, funerals, consecrations of a house, even family reunions. But the spirits that in the past would animate the gong players have changed because of all the economic, political, and religious upheaval that has taken place. Today, everybody embraces this music according to his belief or non-belief, to communicate with the yang or simply to enjoy oneself. Depending on the ethnic group that's being addressed and the occasion, gongs are struck inside or outside a house. The placement of each instrument is set down in the code. Every array of gongs has its own structure. Some use only flat gongs, others only bossed, and still others are mixed. The number can vary from 2 to over 20. But it's advisable to consider the entire ensemble as a single instrument, since it's true that the separate elements blend into each other. Gongs are handmade by specialized blacksmiths. In the past, the most precious were cast, but today they're almost always made by hammering, using recovered metals. This is faster and cheaper. The quality of a molded gong depends on the composition of the alloy, and its formula is a closely guarded secret preserved by blacksmiths like family treasures. We might know that it's bronze with lead, iron, zinc, and even silver added, but the proportions remain guarded secrets. If they are to be bossed gongs, their diameter alone doesn't determine the pitch of the note they produce. They have to be tuned. Molded gongs are of better quality than hammered gongs because they're made from an alloy, while the others are simply bronze. Gongs are designed to fit into each other, making storage and transport easier. In the ancient tradition, the size of each instrument was determined according to body measurements. Outstretched arms, elbow to fingertip, fist circumference, wrist, thumb to little finger, each unit of measurement was precisely indicated and named.
Rakabu, Kagam, Sahe Sakagam, Sahe Pak Banding, the gross, như comme ça, faire the mộc, Sahe, Sahe, Sahe Klang, hay là Klang.
In the world of these peoples, it isn't only gongs that are so carefully proportioned. Houses, furniture, everyday objects are as well. But modernity makes its demands. Today, some blacksmiths standardize the diameter of their gongs using the metric system. For example, when I want to make a molded gong of 40 centimeters, I take a 40 centimeter gauged model and I attach it to a rotating axis. This is better than what they used to do in the past because they didn't have a template. Using this tool, it's more scientific. We make exactly what we want. Many peoples in this region live in societies of a matrilineal tendency. The women own the lands and all the material goods, and they pass on their names to the children. Among the Lawe in Laos, a set of gongs reflects a family hierarchy. The biggest, and also the most valuable, is called mother. The second is father, and the smaller ones are, of course, children. These gongs are struck both for joyous occasions and funerals. Only the repertoire changes. But among other peoples, there are separate sets of gongs for differing occasions. There is a prescribed way of striking the gongs. Flat gongs are struck from inside with a branch of manioc. The bossed ones on the outside, with a fist or with a drumstick. The Lawe possess another grouping of gongs, whose use is probably unique in the world. They are struck only when rejoicing. Creating a melody using several gongs is more difficult than it may appear. It requires concentration and extreme hearing acuity. This faculty of hearing was in the past considered so important that people located the sight for intelligence in the ear. Today, there are fewer occasions for striking the gongs. That's why these occasional musicians set to practicing as soon as their work in the fields is over. If one musician finds it difficult to play any note in the melody, he can change gongs. Tradition dictates that the musician changes his place, but the gongs remain in theirs. This orchestra is organized into two sections, one melodic and the other rhythmic. The flat gongs are for the melody, the bossed ones for the rhythm. Melodies produced on gongs can be sung and played on other instruments. Every people knows a limited number of them, and any given melody will always be played at its precise, correct moment in any given ritual. For example, in the ritual sacrificing a buffalo, a first melody announces the coming sacrifice, a second invites the yang, and a third accompanies the supreme act. Among the Ede, traditional costumes and certain musical forms owe their survival to a group of semi-professional artists who perform in official ceremonies and festivals. But whatever the show, the Ede take to heart perpetuating these secular gestures, hanging the gongs and preparing the jar of rice beer. The Ede play gongs in the image of their language, rhythmic with alternating long and short vowels. The musicians let the metal vibrate or muffle the resonance. In the past, owning a group of gongs was considered a sign of wealth and prestige. Of the same order as precious jars, the instruments were used as payment for buffaloes and elephants. In this set, the biggest and most precious is the char. Before the government imposed official tribunals, justice was rendered by an assembly of villagers, and compensation for homicide was calculated according to the value of one char. After completing the playing of this first piece intended to welcome the guests, the mistress of ceremonies, following the ritual tradition, offers, first of all, the bamboo straw to the most honored guest. The rapid playing of ede gong serves both as an exercise in virtuosity and a sort of musical duo. The more skilled musicians take the most difficult passages and play rhythmic variations intended to throw the less skillful musicians off guard. And don't be the one who can't keep up. In the old days, to make sure they weren't eliminated, young people would go into the fields and practice with instruments they made of bamboo under the critical eye of elders. Now this practice has fallen into disuse, but these musicians are trying to perpetuate the memory. In Vietnam, the 33 ethnic minorities represent only 13% of the total population. They're subjected to a vast assimilation program, schooling in the Vietnamese language, whole populations displaced, a mixing of ethnic groups, even turning cultures into folklore. Gongs are what remain as a symbol of cultural identity for the minorities of the high plateaus in the center of the country. Demonstrations, shows, organized by the authorities, furnish occasions to bring the gongs out of their cultural context and manage to break taboos. During this commemoration celebrating the liberation of the city of Kon Tum, delegations representing the various ethnic minorities of the region are invited to display their costumes, their dances, and their gongs. This music and these dances, originally of a religious nature, in this context, become mere displays in the show window of the reigning power. The commemoration ends with a display broadcast on national TV. Gongs and drums are made simply a background to the show. Even the performers are not all from the ethnic minorities. Some from the ethnic majority, the King, are integrated into the music and dance, even though they may have nothing to do with their cultural origin. In the past, arrays of gongs were an outward sign of wealth and an attribute of power over the Yang. But little by little, their function and the spirit animating them has changed. When they are not applied to political assimilation, they are sold by antique dealers, provided the instruments have escaped the destruction practiced by certain missionaries who see them as pagan objects. There remains a hope that these people of a secular culture, despite appearances, find the strength to safeguard their gongs and the spirit that touches them in the deepest part of their soul.